Towson, ball to entertain the Pittsburgh Penguins on the back end of a miraculous Game 6 overtime win. We've been chronicling that all week, as well as the Wizards, previewing the draft, and, of course, the Orioles very much in progress with the best start in Major League Baseball, and every day there's a different star, and every day there's a different drama, and certainly the Red Sox in their wake this weekend have left behind a simmering little feud between MVPs and superstars and platinum glovers and $400 million baseball players. Alan McCallum joins us live via satellite. It is his first visit here of the season, and first off, Alan, miss you around here. Good to have you aboard, and I'm going to pick some spots here to bring in and let you just sort of take over the floor. But if I would have told you 6 weeks ago that the Orioles would be 12-4, that they would be doing this without Tillman, without Britton, without a real solid bat from Machado early on, and some various other little bumps and bruises in the Michael Bourne experiment, amongst others, a different look here, and Trey Mancini amongst others. Brawl aside on Saturday, I'll take 750 ball all year long, won't you?
Hey, Ness, it's good to talk to you. Yeah, look, I mean, if you told me 12-4 6 weeks ago, I would have said that Tillman and Britton and would have had to have been healthy, and that the whole lineup was, or at least most of the lineup was clicking on all cylinders. And frankly, none of those things are true. Yeah. So it's certainly impressive what they've done so far, given the fact they haven't scored a lot of runs, given they still need the home run basically to win games, and they're making patchwork of a rotation. And doing extremely well with it, and finding ways to win against. And this is the most important thing, that they've played all but 3 games against the division. So, a lot of people talk about that being, every time you win or lose, it's a two-game swing. That's certainly true with the math. So to have them in this situation right now, I mean, it's hard to argue with what they've done. And the only thing you can really say right now is that, get Kevin Gausman going, and they'd be in even better shape. But yeah, I think it's been an outstanding start for the Orioles.
Alan, thoughts about where Bundy is in that framework of a 1, where Gausman is clearly on the struggle. I don't know how to assess Miley and Jimenez because they have a much heartier track record of what they are, which is, various levels of inconsistency. In the case of Jimenez, it's feast or famine. In the case of Miley, I could buy into the fact that, given the arm that he throws the ball with, and given his spot in this sort of rotation as being sort of that Wei and Chen replacement, different kind of toss guy than what the other guys are, that change of pace, if it were, and the fact that these guys aren't making every start, especially early in the year, and they've rested the bullpen. The pitching has been far better than I think we all believed it could be through 20 games, right?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Look, I mean, I'll get to Dylan Bundy in a minute, but I think Wade Miley, I'll be the first to tell you I was not excited about the trade when it happened last year. And it's not that Miley had never been good. I mean, if you remember back, he was a Rookie of the Year candidate. And looked really good at the beginning of his career, but the last 3 seasons he's struggled mightily with control, with command, not being able to get people out. And I think a lot of people will credit Scott McGregor and his tutelage of Miley.
Very similar, by the way. Yeah. I remember Scott McGregor. Very, very, I think it could go either way. Miley could put a 16-8 and a 3.7 together with this kind of a lineup, with a 4 ERA. He could be that guy with this team if he gets the right support on the right nights, and if he gets defense behind him, which has also been a little bit of an issue this year, I think, right?
Look, I mean, it's certainly not that he doesn't have the stuff. I mean, he's not a soft-tossing lefty. He's got good stuff. He just couldn't find the plate and couldn't make the pitches when he needed to, and he has done that so far. Even with the first start where he's walking a ton of guys, he didn't give up any runs against the Yankees. So you really have to be impressed with what he's done so far. He can, as much as you talk about defense, he's capable of striking hitters out. So, yeah, I think Wade Miley has certainly been, I would say, the biggest positive surprise in the rotation so far. And if he can continue that, then it certainly diminishes the loss of Tillman, at least early on. So they certainly need that right now. If he falls back a little bit and they get some more from Gausman or Tillman comes back healthy, then it sort of balances out. In terms of Bundy, I mean, look, Bundy is doing exactly what the pundits said he would when they drafted him several years ago. The first time I saw him, I didn't see it, and ever since last year, I have. Just that changeup is impressive. He certainly seems to understand pitching early on in his career as opposed to just throwing, something Gausman could certainly learn from. And he seems to have, I mean, he's got the stuff, and he certainly seems to have the feel for what a hitter's thinking and how to go against it on the mound. A month from now, he might be saying something completely different, but it's hard to argue with what the Orioles have gotten from him coming out of the bullpen early last year, then switching into the rotation. And, certainly showing signs where he looked like a rookie at times, and he's come back this year with the head to go with the stuff, and at least early on, he's been everything you could ask for. In terms of Gausman, there are a couple things. I mean, I think we all know that the history of Gausman being bounced around between the minors and the majors. I don't know that any of us are impressed with the route they took to bringing him up.
He clearly didn't like it either, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at his numbers, I think you'll see historically he seems to be better in the second half. So some of that might have something to do with it. But clearly he's not right now. When he misses, he seems to try to nibble early in counts. He gets ahead and then he nibbles and then puts himself in a situation where he has to throw the fastball. When he misses with the fastball, he tends to miss right in the middle of the plate, which is never a good thing. And he strikes me as a guy who, the old adage you hear guys say, try easier, that he decides he's gonna hump it up there when he's in trouble. And when he humps it up, it looks like it straightens out a little bit and makes it easier for hitters. That innate thing that Bundy is showing early in his career seems to be what Gausman is lacking. But he is certainly not someone that you'd throw out yet. He's got a great arm. We've seen him when he's good. So maybe he's not a number one. Maybe he's a number 3 or a number 4. It's another thing to bear in mind that he is playing in the American League East with short porches and muscled up lineups, and it is not the easiest thing to step into. And I realize that he's not a rookie, but he's still a fairly young pitcher trying to find his way. He's had a ton of different pitching coaches. He's been up and down. So his head probably needs a little adjustment and a little consistency. There's a quarterback in Baltimore that I would say probably has a little understanding about that kind of experience with an organization. So, I think Gausman's going to be okay, but it certainly hurts that your number one starter going into the season has just struggled mightily. And to think where they would be if two of those 4 starts he's had so far had been a little different.
You hold that hope on Tillman? Do you feel like, they're being honest and forthright and that he will be back at some point and maybe make 2022 starts, maybe kind of sort of to some degree this year and be effective?
This is Tillman's walk year. There's no doubt in my mind that at some point he's going to pitch for the Orioles. I think he needs to. I think they want him to. I don't know that I think he's going to make 20 starts. I don't know that I think he's going to be effective. Look, he started throwing a new pitch last year, and for the first time, the thing with Tillman, as good as he's been, and he since he came up at the end of 2012, he's been better than anything that we'd seen from him prior to that at the major league level indicated he could be. He's certainly, if he's not a number one, he's certainly played one on TV, and he's done everything the Orioles could ask of him. But one of the things that he always had trouble doing was finishing guys off. He never seemed to have a pitch to strike a guy out. He led the league in number of balls fouled off and number of balls per at bat, number of pitches per at bat for quite a few years here. And he came up with another pitch last year, and it really looked like a good wipeout pitch. It really, if you remember the beginning of last season, he really took off. And then he got hurt in the midway through the season. And, I certainly haven't been in his doctor's appointments, but it would seem to me when you start throwing a new pitch that has that kind of impact at that point in your career, you might feel some effects from it. But he hasn't been right since then. Even when he came back, he was good. He wasn't what he had been early in 2016. For whatever the start is, that they went into a season with their number one pitcher telling them in December, my shoulder hurts. And they did nothing in terms of spending some money to find a veteran starter to help augment that. Really is, to me, the biggest crime that Duquette made in the offseason.
Well, I think they think Wade Miley's that guy. They think Jimenez might be that guy. I think
if they think it's Jimenez, they're wrong.
Well, and they eliminated Gallardo from this situation because they admitted they made a mistake on him, maybe in the way that they couldn't cut bait with Jimenez over the last couple of years because he's been that bad and his contract was just that hideous, right?
Right. And look, I mean, in fairness, they have some young arms that have, at least early on, looked really impressive. So, I mean, I understand that. I'm not taking that away from Duquette, but I think you want to go into a season where you look at the walk years of these guys. J.J. Hardy is certainly not going to be back after this contract runs out. Jones is on the hook. Machado's on the hook.
Hardy looks hurt, by the way. He doesn't look right.
J.J. is always seemingly one swing, one step, one throw away from the DL. I mean, that's just the kind of athlete he is at this point in his career in his early to mid-30s. So, yeah, I mean, he's struggling right now, and it'll be a good opportunity for them to put Ryan Flaherty in because I know that Buck says he wants to get him in. He's played one game, and JJ's going to need some days off to nurse him through the season. But all I'm saying is that to have as many guys that are 1 year, 2 year, 3 years away from free agency, where the dynamics and the dimensions of this team are going to be very different in a couple of years, to have your number one guy on the shelf and not have some veteran backup is reprehensible to me. But ultimately, they're doing well. They've had some young guys come up and do extremely well for them covering those spots. I don't know if Tillman's going to come back. I would say if I were going to Vegas, I'd bet the farm that he probably won't make it through the season healthy, or certainly not as useful as he's been in the past for the Orioles. It's hard to see what's going on right now as a path for a number one starter to make his way back to the major leagues.
Alan McCallum joining us here. He is Alan at WNST.net, and he's out doing the band thing and the Strathmore thing, but obviously doing the Oriole thing, as he always does. And, you and I have been at this for 20-some-odd years, almost a quarter of a century. We've known each other now, Alan, talking about the Orioles. And whether it was the Messina Brawl, which predates our relationship, very nearby to that, or the Benitez, Tino Martinez era, or any of the other sort of knuckleheaded things that have gone on inside or around this organization, boy, Manny Machado and trouble, right? I mean, starting with Donaldson and him in the middle of all of this and the brawling thing, he is that guy, and he has developed a reputation, and I don't know what the answer is when he gets his head thrown out at this point. I know it's probably not throwing the bat at the pitcher, Campy Campanera style, but that being said, bro, it really is something now, isn't it? I mean, here we go again and being challenged and all of the machismo and manliness and sliding into Pedroia. Look, even Pedroia begged off of this thing on Sunday, and it could have gotten a lot uglier than it was, but it's baseball, and I don't know this is ever going to change, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a ton of arguments about the unwritten rules and all that. I think this is as big as it is because it's Manny. And Manny's developed a reputation around the league that I don't know if they call him a dirty player, but that he can be immature, and that he does stupid things on the bases, and frankly he does. Now, Friday night, was it stupid? There's a lot of discussion on social media about whether it was legal or clean. It was certainly legal. I mean, he went straight in for the base. I don't know that I thought he slid late. I thought that if you listen to the broadcast, they were saying they were surprised that the ball got thrown to second base. They thought that Bogaerts was going to throw to first, and I could see where that argument could be made, and I think it probably surprised Manny. So he slid maybe differently because he was going head. He was heading into the bag, but it was definitely legal. Was it clean? I mean, I guess at that point, I think there's a little difference between legal and clean. He went past the bag into the second baseman. Now, here's what I know about Dustin Pedroia. Dustin Pedroia would run over his mother to win a baseball game. And I remember distinctly a couple of years before the Orioles got consistently competitive. A whole discussion about the Red Sox and the way they play and what they will do to win, and that the Orioles as a team not only couldn't do it, didn't understand it. And I can't remember what player it was. It might have been Adam Jones, but there was a whole discussion about this when talking between the Red Sox and the Orioles. Well, the Orioles do those things now. I mean, they understand how to play the game now. It's a very different team, a different organization, and almost all of that's about Buck and the kind of players that they went in to go get here a few years ago, and the resolve. And Adam Jones uses the word compete, and these players do that. And Manny, look, if Dustin Pedroia isn't prepared to take a spike with a guy coming in hard trying to break up a double play, he used some colorful expletives about being a part of the best double play combo for a dozen years, and that's I might debate that a little bit, but he's certainly a spectacular second baseman, and he knows the deal. He knows the game. He's done it. He'll do it again. You play that position. You take your lumps.
Well, we saw the Chase Utley incident, which to me was one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. And, whatever their code is about breaking guys' legs and coming up with spikes, that's their insider code. I've always believed that was sort of BS and, against the spirit of the game to be sliding out into right field or sliding out into left field or, aiming for shortstop or doing, sliding through the bag and with your cleats up and your knees up and whatnot. In the same way that kicking the guy in the jaw would be frowned upon up in the air and turning a double play. I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know these guys will police it with beanballs. Fights. Well, that's how they're going to police it. And I don't know what Rob Manfred can do about it. I always sit here as the fan saying, I don't know where the right and the wrong is, but it's clear that he was getting thrown at on Sunday. And it was clear that it could have, should have, might have been a brawl. And I don't know that I would have blamed Machado for going nuts. You can't just walk to first base and say that's okay. I don't think it was.
So you're talking about Utley. I mean, Utley went out of the baseline, almost completely lost contact with the bag to upend it.
It was ridiculous. It was absurd.
It was an ugly play.
It's not the way you would teach your kid to play the game, that's for sure, right?
Certainly not. And it was in the playoffs, and I get it. You're trying hard. But that's not what happened with Machado. Machado went straight for the bag. He went through the bag. Whether it was late or not, it's a matter of a quarter of a second. Who knows? But he was playing the game legally. I think most people in baseball will tell you that if the play at the plate with the catcher that is now basically illegal where you slam it into him was the most dangerous play. Second most dangerous play is not for the shortstop turning the double play, but for the second baseman with his back turned to the runner, taking the ball from shortstop, getting ready to turn it and make that double play. And it's the scariest thing to do, particularly when you've got these big behemoths that hit 35 home runs a year sliding into you. So Dustin Pedroia knows the deal. I'm sure he was annoyed about it happening. I think any of us would be. I think it was a good thing for Manny to reach out and say, hey, look, this was not, I was not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to win. And I think Pedroia probably understands that and respects that. I think his team and Farrell in particular went off a little too much. Again, I think a lot of that had to do with Manny's reputation. But this is the Red Sox are a team that in the last 15 years have done anything they've had to win. I've seen them do ugly things on the baseball field. I've seen them do smart things on the baseball field. It's all been in the name of winning. And when you have a rival do that to you, maybe it's surprising because people still, I guess the Orioles still have a little bit of the stink of 14 years of losing on them, even after 5 years of relative success. But they're still that team. You look around at the teams that are well represented on commercials or on MLB, and the Orioles still aren't there. And I think it has something to do with that kind of stinking. If you're Dustin Pedroia or the Red Sox, you probably still look at them as the annoying little brother in the division because you're worried about the Yankees and you're worried about the other clubs around. So it's surprising when it happens. It's surprising when you're chasing them or they're always there over your shoulder, making their way to the playoffs. And I think that's something that they have to get used to because the Orioles, whether it's Adam Jones or Manny Machado, Chris Davis, they do play to win. And if there's been anything that's been as fun and exciting about the last 6 years. And people will argue about hitting too many home runs gets boring or the way they play. I certainly am one of them. But watching a team that knows how to win, is determined to win, and determined to compete and can compete against these clubs like the Red Sox and the Yankees that we saw them roll over for more than a decade. That's what's made the last five years and change really exciting here in Baltimore. If you're a baseball fan.
He is Alan McCallum. You can reach him, Alan, at WNST.net. Of course, out on Facebook and Twitter as well, and monitoring all things Orioles and talking unwritten rules. The Orioles have been pretty good assessing the rest of the division. We're going to have that opportunity this week, right? It's Rays, it's Yankees, it's Red Sox again, knocking those guys out twice before, like, Derby weekend, which is crazy. Some thoughts about this American League East right now, where the Red Sox have had, famine, disease, bad pitching, injuries. The Yankees have had Sanchez hurt. Obviously, Toronto's been maligned and, greatly so. And here come the Rays, who have been better than advertised, right? Much like the Orioles, better than advertised.
Yeah, I mean, the Orioles are always better than they've been advertised for the last 6 years. Look, I think you certainly have to be surprised about the Blue Jays. I expected them to take a step back. They lost Encarnacion. They have some quality young starting pitching, but it's still young starting pitching. I think the thing that held Jose Bautista back from getting the contract that he was determined to get was his age. And I also think that he has the stink of PEDs on him, although he's never been caught with them. But the rise in his numbers was astronomical and surprising at that point in his career. And when you go out into the open market in your late 30s, in the 21st century as opposed to 1998, the expectation is that your numbers are going to fall off dramatically at some point, and that is exactly what has happened so far. It's not so different from Russell Martin, who's really struggled. Now Tulo's on the DL, and they've had a lot of injuries in their pitching staff as well. So, I mean, that's a team that I think is suffering from age, suffering from some injury, and is missing a bat that really helped balance out that lineup. And I think that's where they are. The Yankees are certainly surprising because not that they had talent, because they had some pitching. They've got a nice bullpen, but that the young guys that you were expecting to see, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, putting up big numbers have gone a little earlier to do it. Not so differently from the Cubs last year. I'm not sure I think they can sustain it. I think that they're riding a wave right now. We saw them do that basically through most of August last year. But I think that the league is going to catch up to them at some point. I'm not saying I think they can't stay in it, but I'd be surprised if they kept up to this pace through most of the season. The Rays, the Rays have good pitching, and they have gamer guys in the lineup, and I think that's showing up early on. I think their record at home, as opposed to their awful record on the road, speaks to that a little bit. Guys getting up to play at home and taking advantage of the dome out there. I think that they are a team that is going to be a pest throughout the year, but I don't see them staying in it long. I think this is ultimately going to come down to the Red Sox and how much they miss David Ortiz or not, quite frankly. The Red Sox are exactly what you sort of expected them to be, minus David Price, maybe minus a couple of injuries. They're a team with a lot of good hitters that are going to make a pitcher work to get them out. But they aren't as menacing because they don't have that, I guess you'd call Hall of Fame bat in the middle of the lineup making everybody better. And I think that could affect them to some degree through the year. Certainly David Price and how long it's going to take him to come back. And if he is the David Price that we saw last year or the David Price from 2 years ago, will certainly hurt as well. I think Porcello, I think we all expected Porcello to come back down to earth. Not that I thought he was a Cy Young last year anyway. I think they scored a lot of runs for him and he won 20 games. But they certainly have a solid pitching staff. They have a good bullpen, and they have guys that are going to score runs. And I think that still makes them the favorite, even with some of the obstacles they've had to fight through so far. And for the Orioles, when we've talked about it, is Zach Britton going to come back healthy? Whenever you hear pitchers have forearm injuries, those are scary words because Tommy John does not follow long thereafter in many of those cases. That doesn't seem to be where they're heading with Britton, or at least that's what they're saying. And I think we all hope that's the case. I think the Orioles bullpen can probably weather that storm with Brock, but certainly Zach Britton is an X factor for this team.
All of these teams have had a crisis already, and we're not even out of April, and a pretty good-sized crisis, quite frankly, for all of them. Major problems.
That's the thing about baseball, Ness. I mean, you have to play every day. You have to be ready to play every day, and how healthy you are makes a difference, and how deep you are makes a difference. We've heard Dan Duquette talk about the depth that he's had in the minor leagues for several years now, and for the most part, it's been a fallacy. They've needed those guys to be healthy and play every day. Now, I would have said to you at the end of spring training, that their roster didn't make a lot of sense with as many outfielders they had listed that were really DHs, and guys that were outfielders that were really fourth outfielders and shouldn't play every day. Pedro Alvarez, who I think should be the starting DH on this team in the minor leagues, trying to play the outfield, and Trey Mancini, who I think should be in Mark Trumbo's spot on the roster, fighting for playing time. It looks kind of a mess. But Rickard goes down, Seth Smith gets an injury, and suddenly a lot of those problems work themselves out. That's the thing about having depth. If you have legitimate guys that can step up and take those roles, then the log jam sort of works itself out. And if that's the way this season plays out, Dan Duquette's going to look like a genius. The key spots that they have to figure out will be spots that will be harder to replace, like Chris Tillman, like Zach Britton. If J.J. Hardy goes down for any extended period.
Well, for any of their stars, dude. They don't have a replacement for Adam Jones, for Scope, certainly not for Machado. I mean, maybe if Davis went down, you'd say, well, they'd slide, they would have more of a chance there. I think even if Castillo went down, I think Caleb Joseph has proven he could do this. So that they do have a little bit, but not, everybody needs to be 35 deep, and you could make a case for some of their guys, but certainly not for the star players.
I think if Trumbo goes down, the Orioles would be okay. I think that means you put Mancini in right or at the DH spot. You call it Pedro Alvarez, who frankly was their hottest hitter through the second half of last season, and got no credit for it. But you look at his numbers through the second half of 2016, and he was a house of fire. So as Trumbo went down, I think it'd be okay. Chris Davis, what you would miss from him, maybe more than his bat, and to his credit, he's having a decent start. Maybe not a lot of power, but he's having good at-bats, and it's his batting average and on-base percentage are showing that. But you'd miss his defense because he saves a lot of balls on that infield, as good as Machado is, as good as Hardy is, certainly as good as Scope is. A lot of balls, Chris Davis saves them, and he has shown himself, particularly in the last year and through 17, to be an elite defensive player, and it really helps make that infield work. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, if any club loses their star player for any period of time, then it's going to show up. So they need to keep these guys healthy. And let me put it this way: the Orioles are certainly not guaranteed to go to the postseason, but they have as much chance as anybody in this division right now, and more than most. Maybe not as much as the Red Sox, but I would put them right now up against any of those teams, and they've shown it so far on the field. The only one they haven't seen yet are the Rays, and they have the best record in baseball. So how can you argue with that?
Well, it's going to be an interesting week and a half here, just going through the American League East again, and these games, ring so important, and especially when you get off to this kind of a start, much like when you get off to the Toronto kind of start, or the way Houston started last year, or even San Francisco, some teams that really started in a turdy kind of way. I did not have high expectations for the Orioles in their offseason. I know you did not. I talked to lots of people that did not have high expectations. This is the type of stuff that sets the bar a little higher. I don't know that they can achieve at this level, and they clearly have some warts and some things that have gone wrong, but this is a key period. I mean, if they can remain hot for another 10 days and get some more good starting pitching here at a time when some of these other American League East, their lineups are depleted, this could be a nice little launch point for them over the coming weeks. But all of these teams have proven pretty capable. It might be the toughest division in baseball, right?
Certainly one of them. Certainly let's see. The Indians are not off to the start that we expected them to have. No one in the West is acknowledging themselves as the elite. Houston's off to a decent start, but nothing to write home about. If you look at the National League, the Cubs are basically dancing with 500 right now, as great as they are. There are a lot of divisions right now where teams are just sort of trying to figure it out because, as you said, a lot of teams have had significant injuries, have not gotten off to the starts that they were looking for. I think the American League is certainly one of them. Whatever you think about the Orioles, and for all the people that wanted to fire Buck Showalter after not bringing Zach Britton in the wild card game last year, what Buck has done has gotten these guys to believe, to compete, and to play the game the right way. And I'll say it again. We watched for 14 years as the Cal Ripken teams that always played the game the right way, that were very workmanlike, very businesslike, very professional, if not emotional, turned into guys that were just looking for a contract, having a chance to play every day when they were backup players, guys that would just take the Orioles Confederate money, and it turned into a joke. And between Andy MacPhail and Buck Showalter, who I still credit with this, they made a significant environmental shift in the organization, from going to a spring training site that was not a joke to finding players that were ready to burst, whether it be Chris Davis or J.J. Hardy, and getting them for not that much, quite frankly. Finding pieces and that would buy into what Buck was selling. And Buck, having gone away from managing for a couple of years, considering the mistakes that he'd made, with a genius mind, but maybe not as great a manager of men at that point, coming back to Baltimore and taking the lessons that he needed to learn and applying them to a club that was getting ready to be in a position to compete and succeed. I think all those things have really stirred into a club that, on paper, none of the sabermetricians and none of the pundits will look at any one year and say, this team can do it. And maybe not in the postseason. I certainly don't believe that they're built for that, unless the pitching that Bundy and Miley, and if Tillman can come back, then maybe we'll have a conversation about it in September. But on paper, they don't look like a team built for the postseason. But for the regular season, on any given night, it's hard to look at them and say that they don't have a chance to win against anybody. They're going to strike out 10 to 15 times on a regular basis. They're going to hit 3 to 5 home runs on a regular basis. How many hits, what the batting average looks like, is always going to be a question mark. But the defense, the bullpen, how Buck handles his pitching staff, and that they're going to give everything they have to trying to win the game, those things aren't in question anymore. And for a long time, they were.
Well, they need to get strikes out of the pitchers. That's pretty obvious. And walking guys and striking out a lot on the offensive side. Over the long haul, that's very, very difficult. Over the short haul, hey, they've been winning 5 days a week. So so far, so good. You can find. Go ahead.
The key for them right now, as you said, right? Bundy, Miley, Jimenez. As many times as they can go 6 or 7 innings with those guys, because they're you're not sure what you're going to get out of the other 2 spots in the rotation right now. Is going to make a difference. They need to get some innings so that the bullpen in July and August is not sucking gas, and if they can do that, then they certainly can compete with anybody.
You can find Alan at WNST.net. He appears here from time to time, talks some baseball. Alan, great to visit with you. Good time to be talking some Oriole baseball here on the front end of not just the draft and the Caps and the Wizards, but they're playing every day. They're playing good baseball for the most part, and it's a nice thing to have a good start, which sort of spurs it on to make for a better late spring and summer, I think, for everybody that loves baseball around here. It beats the alternative, which we've seen before.
No doubt about it. This is they're making it interesting, and when you get right off to the start with your division, you need to get off to this kind of start because, as we've seen with the Blue Jays, if you go the other way, your season can be over in a hurry.
Absolutely. All right, you can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device, talking some Ravens, getting ready for the draft, obviously talking some Wizards and some Caps, as well as keeping you up on all things Orioles. Luke's at the ballpark all week, and of course our WNST road trips now out. Green Bay, Nashville, Minnesota, several options, the best prices anywhere that you're going to find from any of the trips. We have priced ourselves accordingly and fairly, and as to not take advantage of the 18,000 of you who have gone on various WNST trips with us. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. It's up on the front of the website as well as under the Road Trips tab. And you can find me out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and of course, streaming live in the BayaToyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day. Morning newspaper ships to you as well with our road trips at WNST.net. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. That comes at 7 a.m. every morning. And as we get up on the draft here this week, breaking news, any moves, any trades, anything weird that happens, including the picks themselves, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. Sign up ahead of time. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Kolatzos will be here on Thursday, getting you ready for the draft, getting you ready for the Caps, getting you ready for the weekend. Plenty of things to crow about around here. We'll be broadcasting live from Pittsburgh next week for Games 3 and 4 of the Caps. So I'm keeping it interesting and mixing it up. Not that I should have 2 trips to Pittsburgh in any given year. What has my creator done to me? Nasty@WNST.net finds me for any questions about our trips. They are $100 off this weekend, next week. Saving you money, taking you on the road to London, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Minnesota. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.